Today is June 1st, 2022. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good rotation of the earth. May the peace of the Holy Spirit be with you. Due to the circumstances which have placed the world crown into motion, I am obligated to tell you that mass media, political news, and general information are in a state of emergency. During this emergency, health information, business information, investment information, educational information, weather information, meteorological information, scientific information, organizational information, religious information, government information, information on television, information on radio, and information from wireless services are affected. The World Crown's commencement speech usually happens around this time of year. We'll get to that a little later in our program. Today we're going to start with questions and answers. If this is your very first time joining us, I give you a special welcome. Our schedule in the first part of this address is the invocation, questions and answers, business and banking, regulation, economy, law enforcement, public health, education, commencement, benediction. Before commencing, let's start with a prayer. My Heavenly Holy Spirit, I pray today's questions and answers be an edification and produce solid information to be absorbed, applied, and not forgotten. Okay, the first question. The first question is, why have I not heard of you? Well, the answer is there are many ways that I can answer this question. And I have answered this question. And how can I begin this? First of all, government, major businesses, and the news and information industry are in a general decline. As a result, they have failed to perceive us. Those who have perceived us refuse to make diplomatic contact with us because they know how we feel and that we will not compromise. With political and major business and organizational conspiracies, it is either their way of doing things or nothing. Then there are also cases where people in general can't get through to us and there is no explanation for it. And so we encourage visiting our offices in Mazatlan, which are open Monday through Friday. They can comfortably sit 15 people or more if necessary in the waiting room. Our beach offices are friendly, and there are no royal guards or bureaucracy, and sometimes there is a little noisy chihuahua to have to get past. I chose our offices in Mazatlan. I have very strict protocols to keep myself available for contact and to continue communicating with the outside world, running TCC, the Crown Corporation, JC Angelcraft, directing the World Health Organization's Emergency Service, the Office of the Director of Intelligence for Interpol, managing the World Crown, and keeping you stimulated and edified while we wait for better contact and more information. Question: how come there is not more news about the World Crown and the judgment of God? I think I already answered that, but let me add this. The judgment of God has been steadily judging our world for thousands of years without much publicity. In the old days, when God judged the world, there was no television or radio to report on it. Question: why do you think television and radio don't report on the judgment of God? I think if you look hard enough, you might find Christian ministers and Muslims on television or on the internet teaching about how God judges the world. But if they do not mention the actual judgment of God, which works through the world crown, there is nothing we can do about it. Question: why don't people believe in the world crown? There are many people around the world who believe in the world crown. There are some who do not. I think the egos of men and women get in the way for some people. Some are atheists, and they lack faith and trust in the God who has judged their political leaders and who is bringing their political conspiracies to justice. Question: why did the religious leaders get judged? The religious leaders were brought to justice because their lives were synchronized with political conspiracies, which are still in effect and being judged by God. Question. Where I live, no one knows who you are. Doesn't that bother you? Outside my office window, I see a whole world of people who don't know who I am. I also have a large international family, and even the grandchildren in my family all still do not know who I am. Question. How do you think television and radio have affected our society? When film, radio, then television first came out, we suffered 2 world wars in the first 50 years after entering the 20th century. I also find it interesting how in less than 100 years, television and radio has helped to increase atheism, heresy, and communist, socialist, and Freemason aggression. If I might also add, before radio and television and even the printing press, people used to be more sensitive to spiritual life, community and general life, which wars interrupted on occasion. Without electronic interference in the old days, people were more sensitive to the providence of God. I feel they will be again. It should also be mentioned that those who believe in God are always in the providence of God. But now we have this thing called atheism. Atheism is a barrier which hurts people, especially through a secular system of news and information. Question. Doesn't it bother you that television and radio completely ignore you? I'm really not aware about anything the television and radio may or may not say about us. The radio, news, and information industry do not give us any coverage that we are aware about. Nobody's told us anything. Question, why do you think that is? News and information are in a state of emergency, especially on government websites and on the internet. We feel this is to make you believe in an illusion of the world. Question, why is it an illusion? It has to be an illusion because political, industrial, business, organizational, educational, and religious leaders have been brought to justice. How will people learn about the judgment of God if the news and information industry ignores the world crown? The judgment of God is a subject that needs to be approached carefully. The Holy Spirit does not want to terrorize the world. Question. The world does not feel, or as a comment, the world does not feel like it is getting judged by God. How can I respond to that? Life is pretty normal during the judgment of God for most people. People still have to live, work, go to school and church, and do normal things that they do. Question. Why has not the judgment of God been made public? It has been made public. The World Crown has made the judgment of God public through nonprofit websites and limited social media where you can follow it. Question. Who has been judged by God? Leaders in business, educational leaders, leaders in science, organizational leaders, leaders in medicine, religious leaders, government leaders, and their administrations have been judged by God. Question then, why haven't we heard of it? Television and radio news never reported on them. News and information have been in a state of emergency now for more than 10 years, and no one has succeeded in making critical contact with us during that time. A situation which still exists as the judgment of God continues. Why did God judge our world? The reason God judged the world and continues to judge the world is because there exists a ruthless and aggressive international conspiracy. The conspiracy being judged by God is responsible for the tortures, disappearances, deaths of millions of children, women, and men. Question: why don't the police do something about it? The conspiracy has overwhelmed every nation's ability to police it and subdue it, especially technologically. Though things are better now, we are working to get those left in technology, business, and government to work with us. That's it for right now. Let's move on to business and banking and the rest of our program. A4, business and banking. In countries where business and banking are important, things are generally stable. You can still buy almost anything with your good credit. At the Crown Corporation, I said sometimes things need to be done by faith, especially when it joins with the providence of God. Regulation, A5. Organizational and government regulation is a communications mess. When communication is made with the World Crown, we will let you know. In April of this year, I discussed new news consortiums, which are important. See section A4 for the month of April 2022. In 2019, we began the first steps in new public health militaries, which were sabotaged by the coronavirus conspiracy. Better government, better organizations, better health systems, better banking, better business, better militaries, and better police worldwide are still our goal and every nation's goal. The daily page in English or Spanish may be interpreted into any language in the world. The World Health Organization's emergency information portals in Spanish and English may be translated into any language in the world. The Office of Director Intelligence for Interpol may be interpreted into any language in the world. Economy, A6. Around the world, we've created many economies and economic systems which need to be maintained, kept up, and always improved. It is always a good idea to be wise with your money. You can still buy a car, merchandise, or even a house on credit. Despite high interest rates, which will one day be lowered to bolster economic relief, good banking infrastructure is still in place. Fixing problems in our systems will take time. You must pray and be patient. Law enforcement. Police, firemen, law enforcement officers, and government workers, whether or not your municipality, county, state, or nation has advised you and told you the nature of our situation, continue steady in your job. Stability is important. The power of the Holy Spirit will help you. Now, we know all central governments have totally declined, and many are being run fictitiously. It is important for local and state governments to find a way to communicate with the World Crown for logical reasons, especially by the fact that the World Crown leads the world in fighting terrorism and bringing terrorists to justice in every nation. Public Health, Section Section A8, a reading from MMX Rolling Stone Education. Since the judgment of God began with Judeo-Christian, Buddhist, and Muslim eyes, I have looked upon the religious feasts, the Fool's Feast, and the liberal festivals of men and women. The liberal festivals terrify my religious conservatives, who are relieved that God is judging the world's most dangerous people, represented by the Fool's Feast. But in the wake of the judgment of God, there are many souls, either clueless to what has transpired, indifferent to what has transpired, uncaring to what has transpired, or still seeking a spiritual path. See Bali Festival to see what I'm talking about. The 1960s had its equivalent. It was called Woodstock. The people of the New Age, young or old, are not all anarchists or underground. Many will remain as they are without condemnation. Naturally, these people will benefit from new government programs designed at helping them to get work, training, and help raising their children. If a festival is held, there will be efforts at providing security, better facilities to help improve sanitation concerns, and making sure children are not exposed to drugs and alcohol. I find the children of the New Age open to other people. However, conservatives are not so open to them. In conservative life, we have lost that drive to love, that Jesus love, that sends missionaries into places like festivals. In Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Woodstock, 1971, at 3 minutes and 2 seconds, there are nuns present. Into such a world does the Holy Spirit send teachers to teach, as opposed to lightning bolts and earthquakes to wipe out a festival that a religious conservative may not approve of, and with good reason. When these festivals organized in the future, public health workers will be present, ambulances and firefighters will stand by, and social workers will do their own missionary work and reach out to anyone who might need their help. An important part of the judgment of God is how we organize to help each other in the aftermath, how we reach out and teach those who we may not approve of, to allow our children with. They could have been you. Education, Section A9. Teachers teach on sunny days, rainy days, cloudy days, and stormy days. I will remind you basic education, math, literacy, and science do not change very much. Climate change, science, dinosaur stories, and evolution will disappear. The latter two evolved from science fiction and Darwin's theory of evolution, which has its place on the shelf of every library, but will not be taught if I have anything to do with it. In its place, we will make earth science more precise and examine what humans have done with their ability to manipulate science. People who have their college degrees in traditional science disciplines, which are no longer taught, will easily be able to transfer them into earth science degrees under a new educational central authority, which will be set up in each nation which needs it. For people who wish to return to school, learning is not always easy, but it can be a fun and very rewarding experience. Learning requires initiative and not just going to school. Taking interest in every subject will help you to learn and be a better student. Make sure to become involved in your school, and that will make the educational experience come to life. Commencement. If you are a new student with us for the first time, I welcome you. We have had several commencement speeches, each one channeling students by telling them the truth of their world. Yours will not be much different. I think I should tell you, especially those intending to be teachers, that education is going to change. It will be more scientific and less fictitious. The history of modern education is a vast landscape of information, which has been regulated and reformed over the centuries. You are a part of that history, and regardless of that fact that you are graduating or passing on to the next grade, you will not stop learning. Like the previous years, I say the same thing. Mass media, political news, and general information are in a state of emergency. What does that mean to your life? It means you are graduating into a historical time, a time of transition, and one day you'll be able to say to your kids or to your students, I was still in college during the news and information emergency. Now I teach it. What else does the news and information emergency mean to your life? It means each nation is on a path to a new beginning. And being a nation under God by way of miracles, signs, and wonders. If you love communism, it is still part of your history. But be ready. Led by the providence of God, every country will have a better government. Eventually, if it has not happened already, your new local, county, state, provincial, central governments, when they finally have switched, will tell you everything which has happened that led up to the establishment of your new government. Until that day comes, and afterwards, the World Crown will pray for you and give you good information. For those of you passing on to the next grade or to another year of schooling, I congratulate you also. For those of you who are graduating, worry not about your degree in whatever field you studied. We will make sure to find a way to make it work for you, even as education changes, and be ready to be part of that change, even as a graduate. A commencement is a transition into your new life, away from school. Life is a journey. Each stage of your life is important and a challenge which requires mental and emotional strength. Faith in God helps with that, even in your youth. While you are young, enjoy the energy of your youth. Find a way to make your youthful energy and your optimism work for you. Finding a job you like or starting a business is a good activity when one is young. Many young people get married and start families. In all things, be positive and try to find positive things to do. What about religion? Are you an atheist? Did you know that God exists? God does exist. Now that you know God does exist, how do you feel about yourself and the world around you? Religion is as much about analyzing your life, your feelings and emotions, as it is about discovering God. Even though I told you God exists, you still have to discover God and fight through all information about religion. God is a discovery and a personal and rewarding experience. Getting to know the Holy Spirit is one thing anyone can do in this world. No better words do I have for you than to search the depths of your own soul. Discover your soul, that part of you which connects you to others. Your soul is the goodness which lives inside you, and that goodness must be maintained. The soul is like a flower which inclines to the sun, from where it gets energy that generates the life inside it. And so too is life added to the soul of each person when it inclines to the inner life, a spiritual life, which is not tiresome, heavy, or cumbersome. My peace I give you. May the peace of the Holy Spirit, which surpasses all understanding, be with you always. Congratulations. Okay, that ends the first half of this program. I thank the Holy Spirit for being able to provide it for you. I ask the Holy Spirit to bless the second half of our address, which is coming up shortly. Let's take 5 minutes.